It's a little backwards here. Normally you would rivet your receiver that's already been drilled and then head space it. But I'm doing this kit for somebody else who would later on rivet to it, and I'm just head spacing and assembling the barrel for him. So next, after we get the trunnion and all the head spacing mounted, we're going to want to put, this is an AK-74U, so we're going to put the hinge on here. Now, for your rear sight blocks and your hinges, you'll notice to make them look nice and neat, you want to be able to get the gap on either side to be about equal. This isn't really crucial, but it actually can look a little canted from just that little bit of space. I've seen Romanians that have a big space in there, but depending on the country's manufacturer, it can range from pretty little to pretty big. So what I do to get an idea how much that gap is I'll measure how big the area is, get an idea of that, and then I'll measure how big the back end of this is. And that difference divided by 2 is how much slack I should have on each side. Then you can get out some feeler gauges and add up how much you need. And while you're pressing that on there, make sure you get that same slack on each side. It's not really a precise thing at all, but I like to get those pretty straight, and that helps you keep it because these are going to be guided by these trunnion blocks. Also, if you look, the distance that this travels back is pretty crucial as well to make them look nice. If you have one sitting like this, that looks alright, but if you got it too far forward, it doesn't look as good as if it's sitting flush or just a little bit behind it. Another thing to consider with these side folders, the top cover spacing, the distance between the rear trunnion, where that top cover sits on the receiver, and this right here, that is set by this distance. When you push on this block, that affects that distance a lot. Normally you can take up that slack on the rear trunnion, but on the side folders, those holes are already set in place and there's not much you can move it. So keep that in mind when you're setting your top, either your top hinge block or your rear sight block on a 74 folder. Alright, now we're going to press the rear hinge block on, or rear sight block is what you'd be doing on a AKM of any type. We're going to use a feeler gauge to make sure that the spacing is even on both sides. We're going to try to be flush with the back end of the trunnion block here. So I'm going to press it on just a little ways, and then I'm going to take it off there and make sure that it's square. Don't want to go crooked and have to take it all the way back off. Okay, another thing you can do for these rear hinge blocks is the pin that's going to hold your top cover with your sight goes through this hole. And a lot of times when they grind these blocks out, they're not square up top with this hole. So I like to put a bit in there or anything long to where I can make sure that this hole is square. And that really takes precedent over all these other pieces. This is really more important than this being square on and all this, because you want that. He didn't get to send me the top cover with it, but you want that top cover sitting nice and square, because if it's crooked, it's not going to look as good. So put you a bit in there, something to make sure, you got to ride all these surfaces. You don't want this down here really crooked or this crooked, but this is the most important, the hole that goes through there, which holds the pin that holds your top cover on. Alright, now we're just going to make it flush with the trunnion. Remember the spacing I talked about your top cover and the receiver. So if you had your receiver already riveted on here, you would want to make sure that this makes it tight, because most receivers will already have the rear trunnion established. Very important thing to remember. Put your handguard retainer on before you put on your gas port or your front sight. That goes for any AK. Alright. Now I'm not going to cut the groove in the barrel for this handguard retainer until I got my front sight on there. And then I can have this sitting on there and have that handguard look real nice and tight. The thing to remember about these AK-74Us and AK-47 variants, the gas port is drilled at a 90 degree. So basically this one's already been drilled. So that's how I set the clocking for this barrel. That's how I knew what noon was. That's how I knew what was supposed to be center, was this gas port. And also the extractor cut. But mainly this gas port. Now if you see, it's chamfered. So the gases will go around that chamfer. And also if you look, this is oversized. The good thing to do is to make sure that this distance will be right, which these basically go flush. You know, it'll vary a little bit. I've seen a lot of different 74s, and some will be, you know, a little bit past it, a little bit forward. Most of the ones I've seen though, this is sticking out just a little bit further than the barrel. But what I like to do is measure to make sure that the end of the barrel in this chamfer, right, get the distance for that, whatever it'll be, and the distance from this, the end of this muzzle to that hole is about the same. And you'll notice that this hole is oversized and that the distance will be a little bit shorter, meaning that this hole here will be circumferenced by this one, which is what you want, because they basically did that because they knew this wouldn't be exactly on there perfect, and then that way your gas still runs. So this is the most crucial part to get square, especially on an AK-74U. So let's go put it on the press. Okay, so now we're going to press our front sight block on, and I use the same thing as pressing on the trunnion at first. We got a nice aluminum block here so we don't tear anything up here, and a brass nut up here. So we're going to press it a little ways and then check it, make sure it hasn't moved on you and it's canted now. I usually tap it on there with a piece of wood, and then to get it clocked right, I'll take a plastic hammer. See, this one's real small, won't tear anything up. And I knock that sight back and forth to get it just right. And you'll want to find something, you can level off something square in your garage or sight down it. You can use jigs to help you, but honestly I've done so many at this point that just sighting down works the best. Again, every time I press, something's moving. This is very easy to get something to where it's eating part of the metal off, or you know, anything like that. We need to have a jig cut to where it can sit down in this recess to where we can press the barrel just a little bit further, because you don't want to be pressing on it up against the barrel, because that's not going to do anything but bend your barrel. So get you some kind of jig like that.